Hi everyone, this is Jake, aka Lunar Wolf. I found that Conqueror's Blade community doesn't quite have the regularly updated guides to accommodate how this game has grown within the past few seasons. There are large amounts of new players joining every day and not much in the way of in-game tutorials for certain aspects. I decided to try out a new player guide series to go over some of the basics in a more updated fashion. The biggest request I've received so far from my current housemates is for crafting, understanding how to craft different weapons and artillery, what they need to know, and what they should avoid. So today we're going to explore those topics. Let's start with weapon and armor crafting, as it's the easiest to come by. You're going to need a few things in order to craft your gear that differ based on rarity. And just as a refresher, the rarities in-game are white, or common, green, uncommon, blue, rare, purple, superior or optimal, and orange for legendary. White never pops up past the early character levels, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Crafting green tier gear can actually yield a result in the green, blue, or purple categories, which allow for better overall stats and modifiers. This is pretty good for early game and lower level characters to gear up and actually compete more when you're getting into the sieges and territory wars and whatnot. And the best part about green gear is it's relatively easy to maintain, as you only need crafting materials and you do not need to have a schematic, unless of course you are crafting horse gear. Blue tier gear is going to be your best value overall, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. Blue gear, when crafting, requires more materials than green gear, and it requires silver powder and a schematic. Blue schematics are insanely easy to come by in-game. Silver powder is quite farmable, especially if you have a lot of bronze lying around and are willing to break down some of the horse armor. And the blue tier crafting has a much higher chance of resulting in the purple and legendary gear than green gear. You actually cannot get a legendary out of crafting a green, and you can only get up to the purple tier. Blue gear also has the full armor set, whereas green gear doesn't necessarily have that, so it really is the best bang for your buck here. Purple gear crafting, while objectively the best armor and weapons in the game due to the base stats and the great set bonuses, it's a lower value overall for your materials. And the reason why I say this is because crafting it is quite expensive. The purple schematics are incredibly rare, but can be purchased, like all schematics, on the auction house for a hefty amount of silver. The game does provide some purple selectable schematic boxes every so often, but it's quite rare. I believe since I've been playing, there's only been 4 to date. I've been playing since Season 3, and I haven't even seen a single purple schematic drop for me from any source. I've only obtained any purple schematic base gear from those boxes that the game gives you every so often. Now I want to jump back to my statement about the blue tier gear being the best overall value. While the stat and set bonuses aren't necessarily as good as the purple base gear, blue gear is more versatile mainly due to the reconditioning mechanic in the game. Like many other games, armor and weapons have a set durability. Each time you repair your gear, the max durability decreases over time. When you get to a certain point in its durability, it's just not as effective as a freshly crafted piece of gear. So if you don't want to lose your stats, you can recondition your gear. It uses the same materials for crafting and a schematic. This allows you to just revamp the same gear. It also gives you a chance at re-rolling the stats on your gear and the rarity level. Now, since blue schematics are incredibly easy to come by, it's a no-brainer. You just farm some silver powder and you hop on the blue schematic and you just keep going to town until you get the roll that you want. If you get purple gear, unless you have a ton of silver, you're pretty much stuck with the stats that you have, and you probably won't be reconditioning it anytime soon because of that needed schematic. So in my personal recommendation, and most others will recommend this as well, Craft blue gear and strive to get legendaries. Recondition until you have the stats that you want for the build that you're trying to run, or if you want to recondition to get the amount of leadership to increase the number of units you can take into battle, do that as well, but it is going to be the best bang for your buck. Another aspect of crafting is bound versus unbound gear. If you use any bound materials for crafting, your gear will be bound to you alone. However, obtaining unbound materials, either through breaking down unbound gear that you might get in RNG drops, or purchasing the materials from the auction house, allows you to sell your creations. And you can even recondition bound gear into unbound gear if you're using the proper unbound schematic and materials. This allows you to craft a really high-end and really sought-after combination of stats and sell it for a lot of silver. One thing to note when crafting or reconditioning your gear is that you'll most likely be limited by your silver powder or gold powder, depending on if you spend the time to actually craft the purple gear. You can farm these materials by pure world drops, event currency in-game, the battle pass, the seasonal store, or by purchasing green or blue horse gear and breaking it down. That last one does require a bit of bronze, but bronze is fairly simple to come by in this game. So if you save up a ton and you really want to get the silver powder, that's probably your best bet outside of the other free currencies that the game gives you. That's pretty much it for the overall crafting of weapons and armor. It's pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory, but people might not know necessarily the biggest tips and tricks. Jumping over into the second part of this video, we're going to talk about artillery crafting. Artillery crafting is quite a bit more complex and requires a lot more effort than the typical gear and weapons crafting. There are a number of ways to get artillery in Conqueror's Blade. You can get them from random or selectable artillery boxes from territory wars, daily logins, or events. You can get them from Twitch drops. You can purchase artillery, blue artillery, directly from field camps. You can purchase any tier of artillery from the auction house. You can exchange artillery pieces, which you get by breaking enemy artillery in sieges and territory wars. You can exchange those for a specific rarity of tier boxes, or you can craft it. Since the other paths are pretty self-explanatory, we're going to focus mainly on the crafting here. The crafting process for artillery is quite different than that of armor and weapons. For crafting arty, you're going to need to do some more work. You'll need to gather a ton of materials and exotic materials. Exotic materials are slightly rarer materials that you get from various types of resource nodes in the open world, but you can also purchase the materials from the auction house or through a trade post. With some of the regions being locked down right now, you don't have access to each region's type of exotic that helps you craft different types of artillery, so the trading posts are typically your best bet here. There are a few steps in building artillery. First, you're going to need to gather the raw materials and exotics specifically for the artillery that you want to craft. Next, you'll need to head over to the refinery overseer to process those raw materials and exotic materials into the proper rarity tier of the crafting materials for the artillery. Higher rarity raw materials will use fewer amounts of them to process the items. For example, if you use a green tier, you're going to use quite a bit more than what you would use if you went out and farmed purple of the same resource type node. Now, once you have those processed items, you're going to need to take your materials into the open world and travel to a fief that has the right level and the artillery that you wish to craft. For example, I'm heading to Platland in Osteria to craft optimal mortars because the fief is above level 7 and has the specific artillery that I want to craft. Other fiefs may have cannons or culverins, but you're going to have to pick and choose which exact one that you'd want to go to and make sure you have the right amount of materials because the open world can be dangerous when other players come out to field you. The downside to this method here for crafting at various locations is that certain houses and alliances that own these fiefs may actually lock them down from anyone but friendly players to be able to enter, effectively mitigating the amount of people that are capable of crafting certain types of artillery at that point. Some houses may use this as a strategy to fend off and hold down the amount of artillery available to them for the big city and capital sieges. Others might just not want other people crafting, and they want to lock down the market. Since I'm talking about the different types of materials and recipes for various types of artillery, on screen now is a quick reference for the types of materials and the quantities you need to craft specific artillery, as well as where to craft these items. Feel free to pause the video and use it as a reference. Well, that pretty much sums up the crafting of artillery and weapons and gear. If you like this type of content, definitely let me know by either leaving a comment, liking the video, or subscribing, and I'll continue to make more videos in this series pertaining to new player guides to allow you to be able to understand some things that the veteran players have known for quite some time, just to get you up to speed and make sure you have the utmost amount of knowledge to allow you to compete on a higher level. If there's a specific topic you want me to cover, please leave a comment below or come over to my Twitch stream and ask in my chat. I stream every Wednesday and Thursday from 8:30 p.m. to roughly midnight, 12:30ish Eastern Standard Time, and every other Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks again for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.